In the last part of the series, part 24, we saw the commission Yahshua gave his disciples. The 12 were made apostles and sent out and given authority to heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out demons. Yahshua gave a lot of instruction on what their role was and the expectations they should have. He told them what to do when they were rejected. He explained that he was sending them out as sheep in the midst of wolves. He told them that they would be persecuted for his name's sake. He prophesied and foretold that the world was going to hate him. He told them that they would have enemies, and some of the enemies would be of their own household. He also told them that he did not come to bring peace on earth, but a sword. He was bringing division. Those that follow him, that would be disciples, were to be set apart, not of this world, not moving in the mindset and ways of this world, but by his way in which he was teaching. As we move through his ministry, we see how he gradually builds on things he spoke about early on in the beginning of his ministry. As we go through the Gospels, things will begin to become clearer and clearer. He foretold of his death and resurrection to the disciples many times, but they did not understand it completely until it happened. Sometimes we want to force answers that aren't extremely clear yet. I always caution against this. Wait for him to show and reveal to you what he wants you to know. Sometimes things are for us to understand at a certain point in our lives. Sometimes we are not ready for the answer. And sometimes things won't be clear until we actually see it happen, like the disciples with Yahshua's death and resurrection. Later on, you will see that they did not know what would occur until it happened. Though they had the Messiah with them at all times, teaching them some of the things they were not ready to fully understand yet. The point I'm making is some things take time to be revealed. When we force understanding on things, this is how confusion and false doctrine come about. We mustn't do it. If something causes confusion for you, pray on it and wait for him to reveal. Having belief that you will understand all things is a false expectation. The good news is there is more than enough information for you to build a solid foundation in your understanding and relationship with him. Take your time and grow in your knowledge. Don't get stuck on things you don't know, while at the same time not getting stronger in the things you can know. If you get stuck on something, keep reading. He may answer it down the line. Just be patient and continue to grow. You are growing your relationship with him. Good relationships get better with time and patience. Make sure you are using both time and patience with him. Being patient in your understanding and giving him enough of your time that he can manifest what you are desiring to happen. We will continue to build on his teachings and understanding him through his ministry. We are in the middle of his complete ministry before he takes the punishment for our sins. He's taking his ministry up a notch and bringing more miracles and wonders to the eyes of the multitudes and his disciples. He wants you to keep your eyes on him and keep growing in faith. You do this by feeding on his word and applying it to your life while always trusting in him. So make sure that that's what you're doing. Let's begin. So we last left off with Yahshua sending out the apostles on a short mission. While they were sent out, Yahshua continued preaching in the cities. Now King Herod heard of him, for his name had become well known. And he said, "John the Baptist is risen from the dead, and therefore these powers are at work in him." Others said, "It is Elijah." And others said, "It is the prophet," or like one of the prophets. But when Herod heard, he said, "This is John, whom I beheaded. He has been raised from the dead." For Herod himself had sent and laid hold of John, and bound him in prison for the sake of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, for he had married her. For John had said to Herod, "It is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife." Therefore Herodias held it against him and wanted to kill him, but she could not. For Herod feared John, knowing that he was a just and holy man, and he protected him. And when he heard him, he did many things and heard him gladly. Then an opportune day came when Herod, on his birthday, gave a feast for his nobles, the high officers, and the chief men of Galilee. And Herodias' daughter herself came in and danced, and pleased Herod and those who sat with him. The king said to the girl, "Ask me whatever you want, and I will give it to you." He also swore to her, "Whatever you ask me, I will give you, up to half my kingdom." So she went out and said to her mother, "What shall I ask?" and she said, "The head of John the Baptist." Immediately, she came in with haste to the king and asked, saying, "I want you to give me at once the head of John the Baptist on a platter." And the king was exceedingly sorry, yet because of the oaths and because of those who sat with him, he did not want to refuse her. Immediately, the king set an executioner and commanded his head to be brought. And he went and beheaded him in prison, brought his head on a platter, and gave it to the girl. And the girl gave it to her mother. And when his disciples heard of it, they came and took away his corpse and laid it in a tomb. I want to make sure it's clear. When we hear of King Herod, this was not the same King Herod we saw first in part 13 before and after Yahshua was born. Let's recap it just a bit. The first Herod we saw was Herod the Great, the son of Antipater. If you remember, his family was converted Jews, and he was raised a Jew, but by tradition, not by blood. He was labeled King of the Jews at this time and was placed in power by Rome. When Herod the Great died, his eldest son, Herod Archelaus, was placed over Judea and Samaria. History shows that this Herod was feared much and hated. The emperor of Rome removed him from power after 2 short years and removed rule of Judea from the Herods. This is why Pontius Pilate was in charge in Judea when Yahshua was crucified. The Herod we will be seeing now is the other son, Herod Antipas. He was ruler over Galilee during the time of Yahshua's Galilean ministry. This is spoken about in Scripture, Luke chapter 3, verse 1. Now in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, Pontius Pilate being governor of Judea, Herod being tetrarch of Galilee, his brother Philip tetrarch of Iturea in the region of Trachonitis, and Lysanias tetrarch of Abilene. Those were the 3 Herods we come to know about in Scripture. Verses like what we just read in Luke chapter 3 verse 1 are maybe things we skip over initially when reading. But this is why we read over and over again. Because as we keep going deeper, this is how our understanding grows, and we'll see how verses we just used to ignore actually help us gain more context and understanding. King Herod Antipas was the King Herod that just beheaded John the Baptist and the one we will be hearing about more as we go along towards the end of Yahshua's ministry. After these things, Yahshua went over the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias. Then a great multitude followed him, because they saw his signs which he performed on those who were diseased. And Yahshua went up on the mountain, and there he sat with his disciples. Now the Passover, a feast of the Jews, was near. Then Yahshua lifted up his eyes, and seeing a great multitude coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread, that these may eat?" But this he said to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may have a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a lad here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish. But what are they among so many?" Then Yahshua said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down, in number about 5,000. And Yahshua took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to the disciples, and the disciples to those sitting down, and likewise of the fish, as much as they wanted. So when they were filled, he said to his disciples, "Gather up the fragments that remain, so that nothing is lost." Therefore they gathered them up, and filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves which were left over by those who had eaten. Then those men, when they had seen the sign that Yahshua did, said, "This is truly the prophet who has come into the world." This miracle was a very big deal. Yahshua was showing himself to the multitude who he was. It was one thing to do all the teaching and healing and casting out demons that he was doing, but feeding 5,000 men from 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish was amazing. Do you see how he tested Philip though? He knew what he was going to do, but he asked Philip, "Where shall we buy these bread, that these may eat?" He was testing Philip. Philip said, "Not even 200 denarii is sufficient for them." Now understand, in those times, 1 denarius is equivalent to 1 day of wages. So 200 denarii are equivalent to 200 days of work. And Philip said not even that was enough. If it was today, it would be like him saying, not even $20,000 would feed all these people here. Philip placed Yahshua in a box, not realizing the full extent to the power of the Messiah. Let me ask you, does this happen to you? You see something that seems impossible, and you feel Yahshua tug on your heart to see if you trust in him to get you through. But all you can see is how impossible that situation seems. I know it's happened to me on a few occasions. But later on, he does for me exactly what he did for the multitude with the bread and fish. He performed the miracle that only he could have orchestrated. He did that so many times that not trusting in him today makes me seem ungrateful and stupid. In this situation, Yahshua was fulfilling prophecy as well. When they said, "This is truly the prophet who is come into the world," this was showing the fulfillment of prophecy from Moses. Deuteronomy chapter 18 verse 15 says, "Yahweh, your Elohim, will raise up for you a prophet like me from your midst, from your brethren. Him you shall hear." The bread must have reminded them of Moses and the manna, so they believed he was the prophet Moses spoke of. This was a big deal. The application that you should use from this event is that you should never place a limit on the miracles that Yahshua can fulfill in your life. Trust and believe in him. So immediately after, he made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side to Bethesda, while he sent the multitude away. Yahshua perceived that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king. He departed again to the mountain by himself alone. The boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. Now on the fourth watch of the night, Yahshua went to them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It is a ghost!" And they cried out for fear. But immediately Yahshua spoke to them, saying, "Be of good cheer, it is I. Do not be afraid." And Peter answered him and said, "Adon, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." So he said, "Come." And when Peter had come down out the boat, he walked on the water to go to Yahshua. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, "Adon, save me!" And immediately Yahshua stretched out his hand and caught him, and said to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Then those who were in the boat came and worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of Elohim." Okay, so Yahshua is really stepping it up a notch. He is showing that he truly is the Son of Elohim. This is a period in his ministry where he will be showing himself. Let's go back a step first. The people were obviously extremely amazed by him multiplying the food. Again, that's why they referred to him as the prophet that was to come. Moses came and took Israel out of bondage from Egypt, and they must have believed that Yahshua would move them out of the captivity of Rome. Yahshua perceived their intentions of making him king. He withdrew from everyone and went to the mountain. In the other gospel accounts of this event, it says he went to the mountains to pray. Matthew chapter 14 verse 23 says, "And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray." I see this as an example to us. Yahshua was very popular at this time. The people were looking to him to be the next leader. They wanted him to be the next Moses or the next King David. They wanted him to redeem them in the way they desired, but that was not the Father's plan. With the love Yahshua had for his people, the temptation must have been great for him to take the kingdom now and redeem the people. This is what the people were looking for. He perceived that they were going to come by force and try to make him king. Because of this, we see him withdrawing from everyone and going to pray. I use this as an example for myself. When temptation comes, and I have a feeling maybe I should do things a certain way because it seems that that's what others are expecting of me or asking of me, I withdraw and pray. I always go back to the Father and seek what it is he wants me to do, making sure it's his will. I feel this is not a strategy that is taught much. This is often how people get ahead of themselves and stop walking in the calling and purpose that was meant for them. They started off good, moving in the purpose that was designed for them. But as you do this, Yahweh begins to enlarge your territory, and temptation can very subtly kick in and make you believe your purpose is more than what it actually is. People can start getting prideful or boastful or just force things that were not intended by the Father. The Father told them to preach his word and grow their ministry. But instead of praying on how that should be manifested, they start moving within their own plans because of the influence of others. Falling into temptation will remove you from the intentions Yahweh actually has for you. When we submit to the temptation, we move out of His will and move more into the devil's, which is what the devil wants. He wants to trap you into his will by having you succumb to his temptations. So please remember, as you move and go about working for the kingdom of Elohim, as your ministry grows and people come to you with requests or present other ambitious ideas, if sometimes it's something you feel will help people, make sure that that's what the Father intends for you to do. Maybe the idea is a great one, but are you sure that that's what He wants you to do? To make sure, you must do like Yahshua, withdraw from everyone and pray. Yahshua withdrew from everyone and went and prayed privately. People were looking for him to move outside of the purpose he was intended for. He went and prayed. Make sure you do the same as you go out and walk in the calling intended for you. Don't mix the ambitions of this world with your ministry. After he withdrew, he came back with more power. He walked on water. He was walking in power, proving without a shadow of doubt who he was. And while this was remarkable, the story of Peter also provides a strong lesson. He wanted to do just as Yahshua did. Yahshua told him to come, and Peter was bold and stepped out. His faith was strong, but as he started walking out in his faith, the wind started to get him and he became afraid. He started to have doubt and began to sink. Yahshua saved him and asked him why he had such little faith. Peter coming out and walking on water displayed that the disciples could do the impossible with the power of Messiah. They just needed faith in him. But what also should be seen is that when we allow things to interfere with our faith and allow things to take our eyes off him, like fear and doubt, we will begin to sink. Then we have to call on Yahshua to save us. Some of us go through that cycle continuously. We start off with faith, but then let something affect us that makes us have doubt and fear and take our eyes off Yahshua. He saves us, and then we do the same thing all over again. Keep your eyes on Yahshua. Remember him. Have faith in him. Don't let your obstacles or challenges get the best of you. The minute you do, you start to sink, and the longer you allow them to get the best of you, the more likely you will drown in them. Know that if you call on him to save you, he will come save you, but you again must have faith that he will. The bigger point is that there is no reason to go through it in the first place. If you just keep your eyes on him and grow your faith, you don't have to start sinking in the first place. This doesn't mean you won't have challenge or obstacles. It just means that if you keep your eye on him, you will overcome them. So these were important miracles and wonders during the time of his ministry that you should know of. This builds more understanding of why he was the Messiah. Let's look at what you should know from this part in the series. 1. John the Baptist was beheaded. 2. King Herod Antipas was the King Herod that just beheaded John the Baptist and the one we will be hearing more about as we go along towards the end of Yahshua's ministry. 3. Yahshua fed 5,000 men from 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. This is a very big miracle performed in front of many people. 4. This miracle fulfilled the prophecy of Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 15. The people believed Yahshua was the prophet to come like Moses, which he was. 5. Yahshua perceived that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king. He departed again to the mountain by himself alone and prayed. 6. Don't fall into temptation because of others. You serve the Father by doing his will the way he wants, not by doing what the people are expecting. Always withdraw and pray about your ministry and his will. 7. Yahshua walked on water. 8. Because of Peter's faith, he walked on water as well. But as the winds got stronger, he got fearful and lost his faith and began to sink until Yahshua came to save him. 9. Don't let fear, obstacle, and challenges reduce your faith. You will sink into them. 10. Always keep your eyes on Yahshua and walk in great faith. This part in the series was made to highlight and illustrate his miracles. These were things that really got the people aware that he was the Messiah foretold to come. One thing that Yahshua will show us more of in the upcoming parts is his reliance of prayer. He will withdraw often and pray. We ourselves need to model this. By now you know and understand how important faith is. But we need to discuss prayer. Prayer changes things. If you struggle with things, if you have lack in any way, if you're facing temptation and have thoughts you're sure don't come from Him, you must pray. People often ask me how they can get better and stronger in their relationship with Yahweh. The most important answer is always prayer, and it often seems that is what most people lack. Prayer. I'm always in prayer. I often withdraw privately and pray, but then I'm often speaking with Him throughout my day. We have the Ruach HaKodesh, so we can speak with Him all the time and hear Him. If you know He's with you, then walk in a relationship with Him. Thank Him often. Ask Him if you're going the right way. Should you go to that friend's house? Should you go hang out with everyone later? Speak with Him and listen to what He places on your heart. Learn to walk in a relationship with Him. This will help you keep your eyes on Him and not allow you to sink. He is with you to guide you. The Ruach HaKodesh is your helper. If you want to increase in faith and rid yourself from the things that hinder your walk, you must increase your prayer life. You must pray and communicate with Him on the regular. Learn to understand His voice. He speaks to us all differently, but if you focus on developing that relationship, you will recognize His voice and direction more clearly. But you need prayer. Please communicate with Him. It's not as difficult as you may want to assume. Watch part 18 on the Sermon on the Mount again to understand the model prayer. But the most important thing is to start dialogue with Him. So make sure you do that today. I promise your increase in prayer will change your walk with Him. You just have to start doing it. Make sure that you are, and that your kids are doing it as well. So thanks again for watching. If this has blessed you, please like it and share it with others. If you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe to my channel. I upload these every Friday. Please don't forget to follow this ministry on Facebook and Instagram. I again want to thank everyone who has contributed and donated to this ministry. I'm very thankful for your support. Thank you for allowing Yahweh to use you. I'm humbled because I know it comes from your heart. Thank you for your support. Thanks again, everyone, for watching. I love you all.